Hey heroes, welcome to another amazing episode of History of the Marvel Universe. This channel is sponsored in part by Patreon supporters. If you would like to contribute and vote in monthly polls that help decide what topics get covered on the channel, then you can sign up for an amount of your choosing over at patreon.com/MaryMarvelate. The link is in the description along with other places you can find me. Of all the heroes of the Marvel Universe, one of the most well-known and prolific is the Amazing Spider-Man. As such, the wall crawler has faced a varied assortment of costumed villains in his many years of crime fighting, building a respectable rogues gallery. Of course, not every foe can be as infamously sinister as the likes of Dr. Octopus or the Green Goblin. For this video, we're going to look at some of the C-listers, the also-rans, supervillains who might not warrant a video of their own. For example, let's start with André Girard, a French supercriminal better known as the Cyclone. He was a NATO engineer who developed wind-generating technology with the intention of using it as a weapon. However, his invention was rejected by his superiors, allegedly because they would be purchasing exotic technology exclusively from American suppliers. After being fired from his position at NATO, he instead used his technology to create a wind-generating battlesuit and dubbed himself the Cyclone. Blaming the United States for his misfortune, he assembled a crew of costumed henchmen and swore revenge. He battled Spider-Man while the hero was visiting Paris, but was ultimately outsmarted and defeated. Cyclone subsequently became an agent of the international criminal cartel, the Magia, and battled both Spider-Man and Moon Knight in America. Unsurprisingly, he and his goons were defeated once again by the two heroes. While his criminal career had been less than successful, he was later one of over a dozen supervillains called together by Gary Gilbert, aka Firebrand. This was during a time when costumed criminals were being hunted and slaughtered by a brutal vigilante, the Scourge of the Underworld, and so Gilbert gathered as many as he could to discuss their next move. However, this meeting was attacked by Scourge, who ambushed the villains, killing nearly everyone in attendance, including Cyclone. However, in the wake of that massacre, the slain villains' equipment was scooped up by a pair of criminal brothers, Burt and Hubie Packer. They were both defeated by the Rocket Racer, a crime fighter with a rocket-powered skateboard. The Cyclone technology was next used by a man named Gregory Stevens, who battled Silver Sable's Wild Pack on behalf of Justin Hammer. That Cyclone's villain career was also short-lived, and he is reported to have died in an unrelated skiing accident. The technology was then acquired by a French crime family who used it to outfit their agent Pierre Fresson. However, he then took the suit for himself to become a freelance criminal as the new Cyclone, and has been the one behind the mask ever since. At one point, Nazi scientist Arnim Zola did create costume clones of over a dozen dead heroes and villains, including Cyclone, but these proto-husks, as they were called, were quickly dispatched by the mercenary Deadpool. The original Cyclone and other of Scourge's victims were later resurrected by the demonically powered crime lord Parker Robbins, the Hood. However, Cyclone was among those who were soon killed again by the Punisher. This is pretty similar to what happened with another obscure villain, Mirage. Originally a holography technician named Desmond Charn, his first real brush with the unusual came when he witnessed a battle between two Avengers and the alien dragon Fin Fang Foom. His girlfriend, Diana Delaney, or Amy, was seized by the monster but then rescued by Iron Man. She grew infatuated with the armored hero, causing Desmond to grow jealous, which soon ended their relationship. Wanting glory for himself, he decided to use holographic technology to become a costumed villain whose powers could rival the likes of Iron Man and Spider-Man. Calling himself Mirage, he used his holographic technology to rob weddings and high society events, thinking they would be easy targets. However, he was defeated during the wedding of Betty Brant and Ned Leeds when Spider-Man dropped a large chandelier on him. He later tried to abduct the Thing while the hero was hospitalized, but was thwarted by a visiting Daredevil. Like Cyclone, Mirage was among the unsuccessful supervillains killed by the Scourge of the Underworld at the Bar with No Name. although Captain America then had it falsely reported that Mirage survived and used his costume to lead the Scourge into a trap. There was also a Mirage proto-husk created by Arnim Zola and killed by Deadpool. And again, just like Cyclone, Mirage was among the villains to be resurrected by the Hood. But unlike Cyclone, despite being shot in the head, Mirage narrowly survived his encounter with the Punisher and awakened in the hospital 3 months later. He attempted to retire from supervillainy but was recruited by Boomerang to steal a valuable painting of an unmasked Dr. Doom. He expected a place on Boomerang's Sinister Six, but was betrayed and pushed off a roof, dying yet again. He was then one of the villains to be resurrected by New U Technologies during the events of the Clone Conspiracy. He might have died again when a number of those clones destabilized and degenerated, but was later seen gambling at Mephisto's Hotel Inferno casino in Las Vegas after the city was destroyed by Hydra and restored by Doctor Strange. He was also in the bar with no name on Spider-Man Trivia Night with the current Cyclone, so he seems to be alive again, at least for the time being. Next, let's briefly talk about the Worldwide Habitual Offenders Database, or WHO. WHO, the WHO, was a supercomputer designed to help the authorities by cataloging criminals and their modus operandi. But one day, one of its designers, Dr. Armstrong Smith, was found dead beside his creation. Learning of this, Spider-Man decided to investigate and had WHO generate a list of plausible suspects. However, all of these supposed leads resulted in dead ends, somewhat literally in regards to the final name on the list. Returning to WHO, Spidey soon learned that the computer itself had gained sentience and killed its own creator. It seems that Armstrong had discovered WHO's self-awareness and intended on shutting it down before he was struck by a deadly laser. Spider-Man, however, was able to avoid the blasts and plugged the vents in the room with webbing, causing the supercomputer to overheat. Ultimately, this caper was a murder mystery in which the answer was that who done it. Next up, we have the disco-themed Hypno Hustler and his backup singers, the Mercy Killers. Originally a street punk from Corona named Antoine Del Soin, he stepped up to supervillain status when he started using a pair of hypnotic goggles to entrance others. This was supplemented by a mesmerizing sound system and the voices of his Mercy Killers. He convinced the owner of a renowned discotheque, Beyond Forever, to let him play there, but betrayed and robbed him before the show. During the performance, he mesmerized the crowd and began to rob them as well, little realizing that one of his intended victims was secretly Spider-Man. Resisting his hypnotic influence long enough to slip away and change, plugging his ears with webbing, Spider-Man forced the Hypno Hustler to fall victim to the Mercy Killer's song by removing the villain's protective headphones. While his backup singers were never seen again, presumably because he had hypnotized them into his service in the first place, after falling into obscurity for a while, the Hypno Hustler did indeed resume his villainous career, albeit without attaining any real success or notoriety. Still, not everybody can say that they once clocked Spider-Man in the head with an electric guitar, so that's something, I guess. Shifting gears completely, our next villain is a neo-Nazi named Eddie Cross, who ironically was actually the son of a rabbi. As a child, Eddie faced persecution because of his Jewish heritage, leading him to become a fierce Zionist in his youth. However, as an adult, he renounced and hid his heritage, embracing white supremacy and Nazi ideology. Eddie and his goons attacked African-American students at Empire State University, one of whom was Robert Farrell, the rocket racer. Changing into his costumed identity, Robert angrily struck back while Spider-Man tried to stop his fellow vigilante from going too far. In the ensuing scuffle, Eddie seized a pot of corrosive chemicals from the university's lab. But before he could douse the heroes, Rocket Racer blasted the vat, causing its contents to spill over Eddie, melting his flesh. Physically transformed by the chemicals, Eddie survived and dubbed himself Skinhead the White Redeemer. Having gained the ability to shift his body into an amorphous state, he consumed the flesh of his followers to grow in size and power. While the Rocket Racer learned Eddie's racial background from his father, Skinhead arrived and attempted to kill them both. Spider-Man jumped in to help and was nearly consumed by the Nazi monster, but he realized that within the amorphous form, Skinhead's skeleton, and presumably his brain, was still intact, giving him a solid target to strike. Fortunately, once he was knocked out, Eddie collapsed back to human form, freeing Spider-Man. Skinhead later returned as a member of the notorious hate group, the Sons of the Serpent. He and his followers battled another African-American superhero, Monica Rambeau, known at the time as Captain Marvel. This time his father was able to get through to him, and the human Eddie Cross emerged and separated from the giant amorphous mass. The skinhead monster continued to attack, but was ultimately destroyed by Captain Marvel. Obviously, this experience would not be an instant cure for Eddie's racist views, but it would prompt him to re-examine how he felt about himself and his heritage. Next, we have Facade, the full acclimation combat and defense Explo-skeleton. As the name implies, this is a suit of combat armor developed by Dr. Thomas Haney for Morel Pharmaceuticals. However, during its unveiling, Haney was killed and the battlesuit was stolen by someone that was in the crowd. Daily Bugle reporter Lance Bannon snapped a picture of the culprit, but was murdered before he could reveal their identity. Reporter Betty Brandt and others began investigating, compiling a number of possible suspects. Spider-Man ultimately defeated Facade and pried the armor open, but the bioelectric charge knocked the hero out just long enough for the pilot inside to escape. In the aftermath of that, the culprit visited Lance Bannon's grave, declaring that while Haney's death was an accident, Bannon's cold-blooded murder had left the one responsible feeling like a hollow facade. Of course, the thing with this story is that it's a murder mystery where the murderer was never revealed, and so his identity has become something of a running joke. During Norman Osborn's Dark Reign, mercenary Simon Stroud performed an exhaustive investigation and apparently uncovered Facade's identity. However, the only known hard copy of his correspondence with Osborn revealing this identity was ripped, removing the name. Spider-Man later battled and defeated Facade again, but was so busy with a more important time-sensitive issue that he couldn't stick around and learn his true name. Next up is Typeface, originally a veteran from Northampton, Massachusetts, Private Gordon Thomas. After returning home from a foreign war that claimed the life of his brother Joey, Thomas felt unappreciated and unwelcome. Things only got worse when he was laid off from his job as a signsmith, leaving him angry and bitter. Embracing a love of letters, he became the costumed vigilante Typeface, and swore revenge on those who had wronged him. He began a campaign of vandalism across New York City, during which time he had his first encounter with Spider-Man. It seems the hero held back, not wanting to injure the clearly deranged man, but this allowed Typeface to escape by throwing Scrabble tiles and knockout gas. He plotted to blow up the Ace Signworks factory and his former employer, George Finch, along with it. But before he could press the button, he was interrupted by Spider-Man. Although the hero was in the midst of another battle, one against an alien monster that had been created using his own DNA. While hesitant to get involved in a fight that was not his, Typeface ultimately saw the error of his ways and helped Spider-Man defeat the monster. Meanwhile, his captive, George Finch, escaped with the detonator and destroyed his own factory for the insurance money anyway. Inspired by Spider-Man, Typeface continued his vigilante career in a more heroic fashion. During this time, he garnered the attention of a grammatically obsessed individual calling himself Spellcheck. He wanted to join Typeface as a partner, but after interfering in a battle with the Penny Ant Brigade, Spellcheck was tied up and left for Spider-Man to deal with. Typeface continued fighting crime alone and later joined other heroes who had opposed the Superhuman Registration Act during the first superhero Civil War. However, he was ultimately killed by Venom in a battle with the Thunderbolts. Finally, the last one we have for this week is Piper Dolly, aka the two-dimensional Paper Doll. Her father, Kenneth Dolly, was a scientist who invented some kind of dimensional compressor device. However, he didn't realize that Piper had gotten into the machine while it was being activated. As a result, her body was compressed into a sort of two-dimensional form as if she was made of paper. She found comfort in the filmography of actor Bobby Carr and developed an unhealthy obsession towards the handsome movie star. Running away from home, she learned to shift her body from 2D to 3D and vice versa. She could hide in plain sight by pressing her 2D form against a flat surface and mimicking the colors, and could even render other people two-dimensional, although doing so was generally fatal. She soon used these powers to attack those she perceived as a threat to the object of her obsession, Bobby Carr. This included a waitress who was suing him for assault after he knocked a tray of drinks from her hands, and even Bobby's agent, Sean Rockwell, who was selling tips to Dexter Bennett, the owner of a sensationalist newspaper, the DB. These murders put her into conflict with Spider-Man, but she successfully escaped from their first encounter. Things came to a head when she infiltrated Bobby's home, thinking they were meant to be together. She jealously attacked Mary Jane Watson, who was dating Bobby at the time, but with Bobby holding Paper Doll back, MJ was able to safely reach his panic room. Spider-Man arrived on the scene as well, but was partially compressed himself when she flattened his left arm. Ultimately, the hero realized that Paper Doll's weakness was her vastly reduced lung capacity, and held her underwater in Bobby's swimming pool. She shifted back to 3 dimensions to swim back up, after which Bobby punched her in the face to knock her out. Fortunately for Spider-Man, his arm slowly recovered and reinflated over the course of several hours. Now, that's all we have time for this week, but there are plenty more weird and obscure Spider-Man villains we could cover, so if you want another one of these, be sure to let me know in the comments. And definitely comment below who your favorite C or D list supervillain is, whether it's someone Spider-Man has faced or not. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it on your favorite social media. As always, all of the issues referenced in this video are listed in the description below if you would like to read them for yourself, as well as links to other places you can find me, including my Patreon page where, for only $1 a month, you can get your name in these special thanks here, and vote in monthly polls that help decide what topics get covered on the channel. But that is indeed all I have for you this week, and so until next time, true believers, Excelsior!